Next on Arizona 360, steps taken to keep schools safe.
At some point it may come to pass that I've got to make a sacrifice.
Plus the takeaway from tribal leaders after meeting about the border wall with the Interior Secretary.
We're going to continue to work in opposition to the wall.
And what's driving Arizona's year-round wildfire season.
What's going to be the point that causes people to sit up and take notice?
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thank you for joining us. How to keep schools safe. That's the debate reignited after the shooting at a high school in Florida last month. It's a dialogue that's led to a set of proposals from Governor Doug Ducey. As Arizona Public Media reported, the school safety plan unveiled by his office this week. The proposal offers $2 million in state funding for school mental health programs and improvements in training and equipment for school resource officers. The governor's office says it plans to draft legislation for state lawmakers to consider this session. Taking a closer look at Pima County, the Sheriff's Department has 12 school resource officers assigned to more than 50 campuses. The Sheriff's Office pays for it through a general fund. Pima County Sheriff Deputy William Farmer represents the Arizona School Resource Officers Association, which provides training for officers in schools all across the state. He shared more about these programs on campuses today.
The national standard is that we respond what we refer to as direct to threat. And what that means is that we show up and we're looking for stimulus. We're looking for the sound of gunfire, the sound of somebody saying that he's right here or screaming or whatever it is. And our primary goal at that point is to bring calm to the chaos. And that ultimately looks like the person who's perpetrating these sorts of tragedies being captured or killed.
Times have changed. School resource officers almost began as there's an officer present. We want to make sure you understand this person is here to support you, answer any questions. And now it's changed these days. This is someone who could save our lives, unfortunately, if there is an event taking place in our school. How do you sort of maintain that balance of we're here to help you guys, but we're also going to be here to defend you?
Well, one of the messages that the Arizona School Resource Officers Association tries to push out statewide is what we refer to as a triad approach, where we have the deputy or officer on campus that serves as a mentor to students, a resource to the school, and then fulfills the role of a law enforcement officer. We like to have the time when schools are not around to be able to train, to be able to train both ourselves, train our staffs in minimizing casualty in these sorts of tragedies. I think that there's a multifaceted approach we can take to that. Training the staff for lockdown procedures, active shooter response protocols, that the actual law enforcement response is something that we train throughout the year. It's something that we try to stay updated on as much as possible.
Are there things that we can be doing right now to really support these programs in schools?
Yeah, my favorite part of doing my job doesn't involve arresting kids or talking to them in any official capacity whatsoever. We want more parent involvement. That's what we would like. Specifically parents talking to their kids about this kind of stuff. And that it's not something that's to be joked about, hoaxed, or actually perpetrated. That's one of the biggest challenges that we've run into, where we're responding at all hours of the night to help support patrol when somebody's made a threat to our schools. That would be a tremendous help. It sounds like Governor Ducey is working on some stuff to be able to assist with getting more school resource officers in schools. With that, a lot of departments use a grant-funded method to obtain a full-time school resource officer. But some of the limitations to those grants hold that deputy or officer back from being able to effectively maintain school safety and security by tying them down to a classroom with minimum teaching hours and things of that nature.
Working, I imagine, as a school resource officer is probably a really fun, enjoyable job, but it's challenging and it presents a danger because schools are considered what we refer to as soft targets. How do you reconcile with that, knowing that, you know, it can be a dangerous place?
Well, my family, my wife, and the people that care about me know that at some point it may come to pass that I've got to make a sacrifice to help save my kids, mitigate tragedy in these sorts of things. And if that day comes, I'm prepared to make that sacrifice. If it means, my kids get to go home to their parents that day, that's what it costs. That's my duty.
Since the shooting in Florida, student activists nationwide have remained vigilant on the issue of stricter gun control. And we've seen it here in southern Arizona through student-led walkouts and protests this weekend, calling on Congress to act.
We will not continue to stay quiet and wait for the next school shooting to happen. Enough.
Enough.
That led us to David Casale, a senior at Cholla High School in Tucson, who's become one of the most outspoken students at his school. We invited him to our studio to talk about what he wants lawmakers to know. This week, Governor Ducey released a plan that outlines a few different things that could work. Are you comfortable that that's taking this in a good direction?
Well, I mean, it's a good start, but we definitely have to do more. I don't see how not banning assault weapons makes sense, because they're made for one purpose, and that's killing masses of people.
It sounds like you're pretty active politically. You're engaged with the conversations that are taking place. But, for example, a semi-automatic pistol that may have 9 to a dozen rounds in it, that can cause just as much damage as an assault rifle. Are you asking that all sorts of weapons be removed?
Oh no, just the weapons that can kill hundreds of people in 1 minute. Those weapons shouldn't even be considered.
How does school safety look right now at Cholla High School?
Well, we have one safety officer right now from TPD, and he's very helpful. We talk to him a lot, the students, we interact with him. But we also have drills. And what we thought about when we were in that lockdown is, well, if someone is going to shoot at us, they're not gonna do it when we're in class. They're probably gonna pull an alarm or something like that. So those drills and everything like that, they end up being useless when you have an active shooter in your campus.
Have you had conversations with the school district or your principal about those concerns?
Oh yes, we definitely have conversations, and well, they do everything they can to facilitate with us. But if there's no action taken by the state legislature and in the federal level, then nothing's ever going to happen.
You've been in front of hundreds of people with this message. Do you think that people in position of power are actually listening to students like yourselves?
Well, they can listen all they want, but as long as they don't take action, it's used as what we're doing. We're trying to raise our voices and trying to be heard.
Hundreds of thousands of students are commemorating the 17 students and teachers that were killed in another school shooting 1 month ago.
But as long as they don't take action, nothing's going to change. And most of us are going to turn 18 before November, and we're going to have the power to vote. So it's not quite smart that they're not listening to us, because we're going to be able to take them out of power.
Earlier, we had a school resource officer who said that this is not just about law enforcement or response. It's about students and families really creating a community.
Yeah.
Do you get a sense that that's occurring in our public schools?
I get that sense in my high school, but I'm aware that in other high schools that's not happening. We have bullying going over in a lot of high schools. We have discrimination, racism, and we have to address those problems, because if we just ban the guns I'm telling you we should ban, then a student can just get a car and run into a mass of students. So we have to address all of the issues.
A federal trial with national attention began this week in Tucson. Border Patrol agent Lonnie Swartz is charged with murdering a Mexican citizen, 16-year-old Jose Antonio Rodriguez, in 2012. Schwartz shot the teen 10 times through the border fence in Nogales, leading to a second-degree murder charge and the first prosecution of a federal agent for a fatal shooting across the international border. Tucson attorney Bill Reisner has represented several plaintiffs in cases filed in civil court against the Border Patrol. We asked how this latest case stands apart from others and what jurors are being asked to consider.
What's really unique is that it being on the border, that we have our armed agents inside the United States that's actually shooting people in Mexico. So I would say the most important thing would be that people on both sides of the border would feel that there was a trial with real evidence and that there was justice That's the key aspect.
In this case, all the jurors come from southern Arizona, and it's really hard not to have some sort of a feeling or emotion toward border issues. Our political climate has changed over the years. How exactly will a prosecutor or defense attorney go about that balance in really speaking to the jurors?
So obviously, from the prosecution's viewpoint, they're just trying to, bring the facts out, and I don't think they'll shy away from recognizing that people have differing viewpoints. Mm-hmm. But the facts are pretty strong. You've got a young man killed in Mexico, I don't know, 30 meters or more into the country, and somebody shooting through the fence.
And in the back. I mean, the evidence here, we have shot in the back, and then there's also video that jurors will eventually see of this taking place. I mean, that's really got to hit jurors pretty hard.
You'd think. One thing is both teams, they're good defense lawyers and they're good prosecution lawyers.
This case will be about a young man who may or may not have been throwing rocks at an agent responding with a firearm.
Yeah.
Are those two very similar things when we talk about self-defense?
Well, not in the least. Look, it's fairly common in some places that someone might throw rocks across the border fence. They might be annoyed or something. Basically, you just step back, you get out of the way, you get behind your car or something. There's no comparison. When you're using a .40 caliber with hollow point bullets and you're shooting multiple times through a fence at someone, that's only to kill someone.
In the past, the agency has released photos of agents who have been wounded by rocks.
Yeah.
And those have been released to the public. We've seen them in the press. The chances of jurors seeing this and forming some sort of opinion, I mean, that can really challenge a case like this one, can't it?
Because somebody somewhere's been hit by rocks, we all know they can be dangerous. The question is, what are those circumstances and what was the intent of the person, and was it a situation where you cannot avoid it?
While President Trump's plans for a wall between the U.S. and Mexico remain uncertain, it has the full support of the Interior Department. Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke confirmed as much during his first visit to Arizona since joining the administration. On horseback, Secretary Zinke toured a stretch of the border outside Sasabe, flanked by Border Patrol Tucson Sector Chief Rodolfo Karish.
The Department of Interior is in support of Homeland Security on this issue. Although we have the property, they are the lead in making sure our border is secure. Clearly we're going to build a wall. Clearly the design yet is not finished.
The Interior Department manages 177 miles of land along southern Arizona's border, which includes the Buenos Aires National Wildlife Refuge and other protected areas.
We have our challenges on making sure wildlife and preservation and being the steward of our wildlife and making sure that what we do does not negatively impact that mission. Mostly what I saw out there from environmental damage, though, is the unconstrained illegal traffic and the trash left behind.
Environmental groups like the Sierra Club oppose the wall because they worry it creates a barrier that harms wildlife and leads to flooding.
Occasionally it rains a lot here. And what we don't want is the floods to back up and cause environmental damage. Part of the reason why I'm here is, it's a consideration. The environment's important.
Zinke said the Trump administration is taking into account these concerns while it reviews proposed redesigns. The secretary also met with leaders of the Tohono O'odham Nation to discuss border security. Chairman Edward Manuel joins us in studio to share more about how that meeting went.
Well, we have 62 miles of the international boundary. So when they put in the international boundary, they divided our traditional lands in half. So some of our people got caught on the other side of the international boundary. So they're citizens of Mexico. And then we have some that are on the United States side.
And you met with Secretary Zinke. What were some of the talking points that you were able to get with him?
Well, one of the things that we've always requested for the president to come and take a look at the international boundary on our lands. because when they're talking about a fortified wall, 30 foot high, it's going to have a lot of negative impact on the Tonawattam Nation, because we have the migration of animals, and there's the waters that come through which kind of look like rivers. And so what we're trying to do is protect the environment, but also because of our people on the other side, we still go back and forth as members of the Tonawattam Nation on both sides to visit relatives, friends, cultural activities, religious activities.
You expressed those concerns to Secretary Zinke. Did he understand that this would have some cultural impact?
And we've always opposed a fortified wall. We've had several resolutions passed by our legislative council opposing the wall for many reasons. But one of the things that we're looking at as far as not having a wall there, and if we have Border Patrol agents along the international boundary, that will stop the smuggling, because right now they're not along the international boundary. They're all over our land base, except the border.
In your meeting with Secretary Zinke, he made some assurances to you as this process continues to evolve.
Right. One of the things that we always do when we go to Washington is to ensure Homeland Security that they consult with the nation if they're going to do anything on the nation's lands as far as the wall. And they assured us that they'll consult with the nation. But so when we met with Zinke, and that's what we asked him, is that, are you going to be involved in that, since you have the responsibility over the tribal land regarding consultation on the nation? And he said that he made the statement that he'll take the lead in ensuring that the Homeland Security consult with the nation.
With respect to the federal government's footprint on the nation, the Border Patrol's footprint on the nation, are there things, costs perhaps, that you've had to incur as a result of their presence?
Yes, one of the major costs that we always incur is our police protection, taking their services away from our members, but also because they have to do investigations once they find illegal immigrants that are deceased on the nation. They have to do the investigation because Border Patrol can't do it. So they do the investigation, they do the autopsies and everything. And that's a cost that we have to pick up as a nation. And we don't get reimbursed for those costs. So it's a major cost. I think it's about $3 million a year. And the other thing is sometimes in the summertime when the immigrants come in and Border Patrol picks them up, sometimes they're dehydrated. So they have to bring them into the hospital. Some are sick too, so they have to bring to our hospitals and clinics.
Culture has always been a part of this discussion. How important is it to you that the federal government listens to your concerns about maintaining that cultural balance and national security on the Tonawattam Nation?
Well, we feel that as O'odham people, as Indians, we have that responsibility to make sure that we protect our culture, our resources that we have out there.
You've been at this for a long time now. What do you think would work when we talk about border security?
The federal government has to make some decisions as far as immigration reform. They have to work on that. And the citizens of the United States have to work on their drug problems, because a lot of the drugs are coming in through the international boundary. It's going all across America.
This week, new steel and aluminum tariffs imposed by the Trump administration take effect, with exemptions for Mexico and Canada. The new levies include 25% on imported steel and 10% on aluminum. We turn to Eller College of Management professor George Hammond, who serves as Economic and Business Research Center Director, for insight on how these tariffs could impact Arizona.
What happens with Mexico and Canada is extremely important for Arizona because those two countries account for about half of our exports. So imagine that the administration imposes tariffs on steel and aluminum from those countries. They respond with retaliatory tariffs or quotas or other trade restrictions. That could have a big impact on Arizona's export performance. You also want to keep in mind that even if Canada and Mexico are exempted from these tariffs, they account for half of our exports, but half of our exports go to Asia and half of our and then to Asia and Europe combined. About 30% of our exports to Asia, about 20% of our exports to Europe. So they matter as well. And if we find ourselves facing retaliatory trade restrictions in Asia and or in Europe, that also has the potential to adversely affect our overall export performance.
That volatility in foreign markets, that has the potential to impact what is happening here at the ground level in Arizona.
Absolutely. Steel and aluminum are key inputs into the production of a wide range of goods. Steel and aluminum are used in the construction industry, which is about as important to Arizona as it is nationally at this point. But Arizona and southern Arizona are very concentrated in one particular manufacturing sector, which is aerospace and defense equipment. So that would include auto parts, missiles, such as those produced at Raytheon, and other aerospace equipment that uses a lot of aluminum and some steel. So the imposition of tariffs on incoming steel and aluminum raises the price of that. That raises production costs for those manufacturing firms located in the U.S., and that tends to interfere with their competitiveness both across the nation and globally. That can result in job losses.
When the president initially began this conversation, there were tariffs, 25%, 10%, and then it was exemptions. What does that do for conversations as they're taking place with NAFTA negotiations? Yeah,
it greatly complicates things, and it really contributes to the inefficiency with which our economy works, right? What we want is for firms across the globe to be competing on a fairly equal basis. What this sets up, particularly not only imposing tariffs, but then essentially creating a system where we negotiate one-on-one with other countries to see if they'll be exempted as well, essentially creates a system where an administration in Washington decides winners and losers across the globe, who gets to trade with us and who doesn't, who gets the advantages and who doesn't. It's a very inefficient system, and it's really not the way we want the international trading system to work.
Ultimately, is there a way that this trickles down to the average consumer, people like you and I?
Absolutely. The tariffs mean that we're going to be paying more for goods that we purchase. So aluminum cans, we all drink, most of us drink soda and or beer and other drinks that come in those kind of cans. Those cost more if you start aggregating those small increases per six-pack across the millions of six-packs that are consumed every year, and that's a lot of income that's lost.
We welcome spring this week and the onset of rising temperatures in Arizona. It comes as researchers at the University of Arizona predict more widespread wildfires in the western U.S. University of Arizona professor Donald Falk analyzed 35 years of climate data to get a deeper understanding of how it's changing wildfire behavior. He shared those findings with us this week.
We think the primary effect that's going on between climate and wildfire is that climate is making the fire season longer. So it used to be that there would only be 6 or 8 months when wildfires would actually burn. The rest of the time it was too cold or too wet, conditions just weren't favorable, or you didn't have the fuels in the middle of winter. Well, now we are close to a 9 or 10 month fire season throughout much of the western U.S. And here in southern Arizona, we are pretty much 12 months of the year. There could be fire in any given month of the year. That means that fires have a longer time to grow and get large. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the behavior is more extreme. They just have time to get bigger.
Are people out there, the government, are we talking about how we fix this?
We're currently spending $10 to $15 billion a year, and that's a conservative estimate on wildfire suppression, economic costs, insurance losses. If we put a fraction of that into returning fire to the landscape in a controlled way, prescribed fire, fuel treatments, we would be so much better off. But the land managing agencies, such as the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service, can't afford to do that because they're spending literally half of their budget on fire suppression. They don't have any money left over for fuel treatment or proper sustainable forest management. So a big change we could make would be to find a way not to deplete the resources of our major land managing agencies in emergency firefighting, which just keeps them locked into the box that we're in currently.
At what point will we finally get it as a society where we say it's too dry, we're not cutting down brush and bulky materials?
We talk about that a lot as scientists. What's going to be the point that causes people to sit up and take notice? Certainly the 2017 fire season throughout the West, but especially in Northern and Southern California, was a wake-up call for thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who were affected directly. We hope that that becomes a wake-up call for Congress to understand that we can't simply keep doing what we're doing. And it's interesting to note, by the way, these fires, it was not only the fire risk itself within the perimeter of the burned area, it was the post-fire flooding, which is very consequential. And we've seen this many, many times throughout the United States, not just in the West.
It seems that people always want to go back to those areas and rebuild.
They do. We love living next to nature and surrounded by it. And that's a very human instinct, and it actually comes from a very good place, people's affinity for nature. That's a very important property of us as a species. But if you do that in an area that is fire prone, you can't then act surprised when you find yourself surrounded by fire. So here's the thing. The main signature that we saw of climate on affecting the area burned is winter and spring rainfall and temperatures, and then some signal in summer temperature as well. So these are the things that are driving wildfire to be larger and more unpredictable. Those are exactly where climate change is taking us. So the lesson is we can't simply go on rebuilding and saying, oh, well, we've had our fire and now we're safe for another 50 years. It's not going to work like that. And we're going to be putting people's lives at risk and property and huge amount of resources at risk if we keep thinking that the problem will go away. It's not going to.
That's all for this week. If you have any feedback, send us an email, arizona360@azpm.org. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.